The wind came down the valley like a low, tired sigh, dragging dust across the empty street and settling it into the cracks of an old west town that had learned how to wait. Buildings leaned with age. Porch boards creaked even when no one walked them. This was a place where people arrived carrying hope and left carrying less, and where the land itself seemed to ask a quiet question of anyone brave enough to stay. She stepped off the stagecoach with nothing but a small case and a look that had learned how not to ask for much. Her shoes were worn thin, her dress patched more times than it was whole, and her hands trembled just enough to betray the strength she was forcing herself to hold. She had traveled a long way over forgotten trails, through dust storms and nights without shelter, guided only by a letter folded soft from being read too often. It promised work, it promised safety. It did not promise kindness. The driver did not wait. He snapped the reins and rolled on, leaving her alone in the open street, surrounded by strangers who pretended not to see her. This was frontier life. People learned quickly where to place their eyes. She stood there until her legs ached, then began walking toward the ranch house at the edge of town. It sat back from the road, weathered and plain, with a porch wide enough for rocking chairs and quiet thoughts. Horses moved slowly in the corral. A dog lifted its head but did not bark. He was there, leaning against a post, hat in his hand instead of on his head. The rancher had a way of standing still that made the world move around him. His coat was dusty, his boots scarred from years of Western survival, and his eyes carried the calm of someone who had already lost the things that hurt most. Folks in town said he kept to himself, that he did not speak unless words were needed, that he had once loved and buried that love under the same soil that fed his land. She stopped a few steps away. Her voice came soft but steady. I was told there was work here. He studied her without hurry, taking in the case, the thin sleeves, the careful way she held herself. He nodded once. There is. She swallowed, relief and fear mixing together. Work was one thing. A place to sleep was another. She hesitated, then asked the question that had followed her across the plains. Where would I sleep? The words hung between them, heavier than they sounded. She had asked that question before. It usually ended with a shrug, a barn, or silence. The rancher looked past her for a moment, toward the hills where the sun dipped low and turned the land gold. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it did not waver. We will talk about that tonight. That was not an answer, and it was not a refusal. It was something in between, and it left her unsure whether to hope or prepare herself for another long night. He led her to the porch and set her case down gently, as if it held something fragile. Inside the house smelled of wood smoke and coffee gone cold. The place was clean but spare. One table, 2 chairs, a lamp that had seen better years. A child's small wooden horse sat on a shelf, its paint worn smooth by hands that were no longer there. She noticed it but did not ask. As the day faded, another presence appeared near the edge of the property. An older native woman moved slowly from the trees, her braids streaked with gray, her eyes sharp and knowing. She brought herbs tied in cloth and a quiet nod of greeting. She had helped deliver calves on that land. She had helped bury the dead. Her stories were older than the fences. She looked at the woman from the stagecoach and said nothing, but her gaze softened. Supper passed in near silence. Bread, beans, the kind of meal meant to keep a body working, not comfort a soul. Still, the woman ate as if it were a gift. She had learned not to take such things for granted. When night settled, the rancher stood and carried the lamp toward the back room. He paused, then turned. There is a spare bed. It belonged to my sister. The words were plain, but they carried weight. He had not offered that to anyone in years. Her breath caught. She did not move at first, afraid the offer might disappear if she reached for it too quickly. Are you sure? He nodded once. You will be safe here. Something in his tone made her believe him. The loneliness she had carried so long pressed against her chest, aching to be set down. She followed him down the narrow hall, each step feeling like crossing a line she did not know how to name. The bed was simple, but clean, a quilt folded at the foot, a window that looked out toward the open land. She set her case down and stood there, unsure what to say. Thank you came out rough, shaped by years of holding back words. He paused at the door. Rest. Tomorrow comes early." When he left, she sat on the edge of the bed and let herself breathe for the first time since she had arrived. Outside, coyotes called to one another, and the wind brushed the walls like a cautious hand. She did not know yet that the question she had asked would change both their lives. She did not know that the rancher's answer was only the beginning of something neither of them had planned. As sleep finally claimed her, the land outside waited, patient as it always had been, ready to test whatever fragile hope had just taken root. Morning did not arrive gently. It came with a pale sky and a cold breath that slipped through every gap in the boards. The ranch house creaked as if it were waking up slow and sore, same as the people inside it. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she heard was the soft clink of metal from the kitchen, and the second was the steady sound of boots crossing the porch. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling beams. The quilt had been warmer than she expected. That alone felt strange, like kindness in a place where kindness often came with a price. She sat up and smoothed her hair with fingers that shook less than yesterday. Then she stood and opened her small case. There was not much in it: a spare dress, a thin shawl, a tin comb, a little cloth pouch with 2 coins that had survived by being hidden in her shoe, and the letter folded soft, the edges worn like an old prayer. She did not read it again. She already knew every line. When she stepped into the kitchen, the rancher was by the stove, pouring coffee into 2 cups. He did not look surprised to see her. He just set 1 cup on the table, near a plate of bread. "Eat," she sat, careful and quiet. The coffee was bitter, but it woke her bones. The bread was plain, but it filled the hollow place in her belly. He ate across from her with the same steady silence as the night before, like a man who had learned that words could make trouble where none existed. Outside the window, the land stretched wide and lonely, cut by a creek bed and dotted with scrub. A few cattle moved slow in the distance. The world looked open, but it was not free. It was harsh and watchful, and it had no mercy for those who arrived unprepared. After a while, he stood. "I will show you what needs doing." She followed him out. The sun had not yet warmed the dirt, and the air carried the sharp smell of sage and old smoke. A couple of horses stood tied by the rail. One lifted its head when they passed, ears turning toward her, then went still again. He handed her a bucket. "Water first, then sweep the porch. After that we will see." She nodded and did not ask questions. She had learned the rule of work in a hard land: do what is asked, do it well, do not demand more than you are given. But as she walked toward the pump, she could feel his eyes on her back, not in a hungry way, but in the wary way of a man measuring distance. She understood that look. She had seen it on faces in boarding houses and on ranches where men watched women like they were either trouble or weakness. She did not know which one he thought she was. At the pump, she worked the handle, the cold water splashing into the bucket. Her hands ached, but she did not slow. She carried it to the kitchen and set it down. Then she took the broom and swept the porch, pushing dust and straw off the boards, cleaning a space that did not truly want to be clean. The older native woman returned while she was sweeping, stepping up the porch without sound. She wore a dark shawl and carried a bundle of dried plants. She stopped near the post and watched for a long moment. "You came far," she said at last. The woman swallowed. "Far enough." The older woman's gaze moved over her face, her thin wrists, the faint bruise at her collarbone that the dress did not fully hide. "The road leaves marks," she said. Before the woman could answer, the rancher came back with a coil of rope over his shoulder. His eyes flicked to the older woman in a way that softened just slightly. "Morning," he said. The older woman nodded. Morning. There was history between them, quiet and unspoken. A trust built over time, maybe over sorrow. The woman sweeping felt like she was watching a door that did not open all the way. The older woman stepped closer and lowered her voice. "The town will notice her." The rancher's jaw tightened. "Let them." The older woman did not argue, but she did not look pleased either. "Not everyone looks and forgets," she said. "Some look and remember, some look and take." The rancher's eyes went toward the road, as if he could already see the shape of trouble coming. "I know." The older woman turned to the woman with the broom. "Be careful with your words," she said. "Be careful with your kindness, too. Out here, both can be used against you." Then she walked off the porch and disappeared into the light the same way she had come, leaving the air feeling heavier. The woman finished sweeping and set the broom aside. The rancher motioned toward the corral. "Help me with the feed." They worked without talking much. She carried grain, careful not to spill. He checked fence posts and tightened a loose hinge, his hands sure. Once, the wind blew grit into her eyes and she blinked hard, fighting tears. He noticed without comment. He just stepped closer and tilted his hat so the brim cast a shadow over her face, giving her a small shield without making a show of it. That simple act stayed with her longer than it should have. By midday her arms were aching, her fingers were raw. But she did not stop. She had promised herself she would not be a burden. She had promised herself she would earn every bite she took. When the rancher finally said, "Enough for now," she almost felt lost. Work was what she understood. Rest felt like danger, like a moment when thoughts could catch up. They sat on the porch in the shade. He poured water into a tin cup and handed it to her. Their hands brushed, just for a breath, and both of them pulled back like the touch had surprised them. She stared at her lap. "You do not have to stay if you do not want to," he said. She looked up. Where would I go? It was not meant as a challenge. It was truth. His eyes held hers for a moment, then drifted away. "This land is not easy. I know," she said. "I have known hard land." He studied her again. "You have family." The question was simple, but it landed like a stone. She pressed her lips together. For a moment she almost lied. Lying was safer. But something in his stillness made lying feel shameful. "No," she said. He nodded once, as if he already guessed. She took a slow breath and let her gaze move out over the fields. "I had a mother," she said. "She died when I was small, fever, the kind that comes fast and leaves faster. After that I lived with a man who called himself kin. He was not." The rancher did not interrupt. He just listened, his face unreadable. "He promised he would keep me safe," she went on. "Promised I would have food and a roof, but promises in the Old West are thin as paper. When the winter came and work ran out, he looked at me like I was something he could trade." Her fingers curled into her skirt. "I ran before he could." The rancher's jaw worked, a muscle shifting near his cheek. "How long have you been alone?" "Long enough," she said. Silence fell again. A hawk circled far overhead. Somewhere, a board creaked under the heat. After a while, she dared to ask, "And you? Do you have family?" The question seemed to strike him in a place he kept guarded. His gaze went toward the shelf inside where the small wooden horse sat. He did not look at it long, but she saw the change in him, the way his shoulders tightened. "Had," he said. Only one word, but it opened a crack. She did not push. Still, the air around them seemed filled with things not said. A Wild West love story did not begin with songs and easy smiles. It began with silence and the careful testing of trust. They returned to work later, but the day carried a different weight. She caught herself watching him when he was not looking. Not with longing, not yet, but with curiosity and a strange sense of being near something wounded that had learned to hide. As evening came, a rider passed along the road, slow and deliberate. The rancher noticed at once. His hand rested near the railing, not reaching for a weapon, just bracing like a man expecting a hard conversation. The rider did not stop, but he looked toward the house. The look was not friendly. It was measuring, like a man counting what he might take. The rancher's eyes stayed on him until he vanished behind a rise. "Who was that?" she asked quietly. The rancher did not answer right away. "Someone from town," he finally said. "Someone who does not like to see what he thinks does not belong." Her stomach tightened. "Does he know I am here?" The rancher's gaze stayed fixed on the road, as if listening for hoofbeats that might return. "He will soon." The wind picked up again, pushing dust across the yard. The woman felt it settle on her skin like a warning. Inside, the lamp lit the room with a tired glow. She washed her hands, then sat at the table while he checked the door latch twice, not once. It was a small thing, but it told her enough. Out here, danger did not always come with shouting. Sometimes it came with a quiet knock, a polite smile, and men who thought the frontier gave them the right to decide a person's worth. Later, when she returned to the spare room, she heard voices outside, faint but close enough to chill her blood. Men talking near the road, laughing low. She went to the window and pulled the curtain back just a finger's width. In the dark, she could see two shapes near the fence line. One spat into the dirt. The other pointed toward the house. Her heart hammered. She backed away, pressing a hand to her mouth to keep from making a sound. In the hall, she heard the rancher's footsteps, slow and steady, stopping outside her door. He did not knock. He spoke through the wood, voice low. "Do not open that window again tonight," he said. "And if you hear the porch boards creak, stay where you are." She froze. "Are they coming?" she whispered. There was a pause, and she imagined him standing there, listening to the night like it was a living thing. "I do not know," he said. "But I will be awake." The lamplight under the door shifted as he moved away. The woman sat on the bed, spine stiff, hands clenched in the quilt. In the darkness of that room, she understood something with sudden clarity. The question she had asked about where she would sleep had not only been about a bed. It had been about whether she would be protected, whether she would be claimed by safety in a world that claimed people in cruel ways. And now, with eyes on the house and whispers on the road, the rancher's quiet promise of safety was about to be tested by the very land that never forgave weakness. She did not sleep much. Each time her eyes drifted shut, the night seemed to shift, and her mind would pull her back awake to listen. The old house made its own noises, settling on its frame, the boards expanding and shrinking as the air cooled. But now every creak sounded like a footstep, every whisper of wind like a hand testing the door. She lay with the quilt pulled to her chin, staring into the dark. She tried to remember the last time she had slept without fear. The memory would not come. Fear had become as common as breath. It had followed her through boarding rooms and barns, across roads where men watched too long, across camps where laughter turned sharp after sundown. The frontier did not ask permission to hurt you. It simply did. Near midnight she heard it. A single creak on the porch, slow and measured, as if someone wanted the sound to be heard. She sat up so fast her head spun. The rancher's warning came back to her, clear as if he were standing in the room. "Stay where you are," another creak, then silence. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the quilt until her knuckles went pale. She wanted to run into the hall. She wanted to call out, but she did neither. She held still and listened until her ears rang with the effort. Then came a sound from the front room, not loud, just a careful scrape. A chair moved a fraction. The rancher was awake, just as he said he would be. A moment later, she heard his voice, low and hard, barely above a breath. "Go on, you have no business here." There was a pause. A murmur of another man's voice, too far to catch clearly, the words blurred by wind and distance. Then a short laugh, the kind that carried no joy. The rancher answered again, the same calm tone that made her blood run colder than shouting would have. "You heard me?" Silence stretched. She imagined men standing on the porch, weighing him, weighing the house, weighing what they believed they could take. She imagined their eyes on the windows. On her, then the porch boards creaked again, moving away this time. Footsteps faded into the dirt. She waited a long time before she dared to breathe fully. When her heart finally slowed, she pressed a hand to her mouth and forced herself not to cry. Tears were loud, tears were weakness. Tears were a thing men used as proof you could be broken. Morning came gray and uneasy. She stepped into the kitchen with shadows still under her eyes. The rancher was already there, pouring water into the basin, washing his hands like the night had been nothing. He did not meet her gaze at first. "Did someone come?" she asked. He nodded once, 2 of them. Her throat tightened. Why? He finally looked up. His eyes were steady, but there was a hard edge in them now, like flint. "Because you are new, because you are alone. Because this town has men who think a woman without a name to protect her is a thing they can claim." The truth of it made her stomach twist. "What did you do?" He dried his hands on a towel, slow and controlled. "I told them to leave, and if they come back." He held her gaze then, and the quiet promise in his eyes was heavier than any oath spoken in church. "Then they will learn I do not make the same request twice." She did not know if that should comfort her. It did, and it frightened her too. She had seen what happened when men decided they had to defend what was theirs. The frontier did not care who was right. It only counted who was left standing. All day, the rancher moved differently. He checked fences more often. He watched the road. He kept the horses close. He spoke little, but the silence no longer felt peaceful. It felt like a storm gathering in a far canyon, quiet until it was not. The older native woman returned in the afternoon, carrying a bundle of dried roots and a small jar of salve. She came into the yard without greeting and looked straight at the rancher. "They were here last night," she said. He nodded. "I know." The older woman's eyes slid to the woman standing near the pump, trying not to listen and failing. "Trouble follows her like dust follows a wagon," the older woman said, not unkind, just honest. The rancher's jaw tightened again. "Trouble follows every living soul out here." The older woman stepped closer, lowering her voice. "That man from town. The one with the red scarf, he has been speaking." The rancher's face did not change, but something in his posture did. "Speaking about what? About you? About her? About what he thinks you owe the town for keeping to yourself. He says you are hiding something, and now you have brought it to your door." The woman felt her knees go weak. She steadied herself with the pump handle, staring at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. The older woman continued, her gaze sharp as a blade. "He says a woman came to your house and you did not take her to the sheriff. He says you mean to keep her." The rancher's voice went flat. He can say what he wants. "Words can gather men," the older woman warned. "Men who cannot be reasoned with once they smell a chance to feel powerful." The rancher nodded, not in agreement, but in acceptance, like a man who had already measured the cost and decided he would pay it anyway. When the older woman left, she pulled the woman aside for a moment. "Your fear is loud," she said softly. "Try to quiet it. Predators listen for that sound." The woman swallowed. "I did not come to bring harm." The older woman studied her face. "No," she said. "But harm does not always wait for invitation." That evening, the rancher rode into town for supplies. He told her to stay close to the house and keep the door barred. She nodded, but the moment he disappeared down the road, the emptiness of the ranch pressed in around her. The land looked wider. The sky looked farther away. The house felt like a small island, and she was alone on it. She tried to keep busy. She scrubbed the floor. She folded quilts. She mended a tear in one of his shirts with thread so thin it threatened to break. Her hands moved, but her thoughts ran in circles. If she left, the trouble might pass him by. If she stayed, she might ruin the only safe place she had found. That was the cruel shape of her choice. The frontier made you believe you had to be grateful for survival, even when survival asked you to sacrifice your own hope. The sun was dipping when she saw him return. 2 sacks over the saddle, shoulders tense, eyes scanning. Behind him, on the road, another rider followed at a distance. Her mouth went dry. The rancher noticed her on the porch and raised a hand, small and steady, as if to tell her not to move. He dismounted, led his horse closer, and spoke under his breath. "Go inside," he said. Now she obeyed. But she did not go far. She stood just inside the doorway, the crack between the boards giving her a sliver of view. The rider behind him stopped near the gate. The man sat tall in the saddle, scarf at his neck even in the warm light. His hat brim shadowed his eyes, but she could feel the weight of his stare. "Evening, rancher," the man called. The rancher did not step forward. He stayed on his side of the fence, body loose but ready. "Evening. Heard you got yourself a guest," the man said, voice smooth like oil. "A woman just appeared at your place?" "Folks are curious. Curiosity is not my concern," the rancher replied. The man chuckled. "Everything is the town's concern when it starts causing talk. Sheriff does not like talk." The rancher's eyes narrowed. "The sheriff can ride out here himself if he wants to ask questions." The man's smile faded just a touch, but his voice stayed polite. "No need for that. I came to be neighborly. Make sure all is well. Make sure you are not being taken advantage of." The rancher's hand tightened around the rope in his grip, but his tone stayed even. "All is well." The man's gaze slid toward the house, toward the doorway where she stood hidden. It felt like his eyes could see straight through wood. "She is inside," he said, more statement than question. The rancher did not answer. The man leaned slightly forward in his saddle. "A lone woman on a lone ranch? That can lead to misunderstandings. Men might think you are keeping her. Men might think she is yours." The rancher's voice dropped low. "She is under my roof. That is all anyone needs to know." The man's smile returned, thin and sharp. "Oh, but it matters to the town." It matters to men who do not like surprises. It matters to men who think rules should be followed. You have always been a man who makes his own rules. The rancher stepped closer to the fence, eyes steady. What do you want? The man took his time answering. I want peace. I want order. I want the sheriff not to come looking. I want folks not to start making stories about you and that woman. Stories can turn ugly. Then tell them to mind their own business, the rancher said. The man's polite mask cracked, just enough to show something colder beneath. Or you can bring her into town tomorrow and let the sheriff decide if she belongs, if she has papers. If she has reason to be here, that way everyone sleeps easy. The woman's heart pounded. Papers, she had none. No proof of who she was, only a name spoken in her mother's voice long ago, and a past that was not safe to lay on a sheriff's desk. The rancher's silence stretched long. When he spoke, it was with a quiet force that made the air feel still. She stays. The man's eyes narrowed. You sure about that? The rancher did not flinch. I'm sure. The man sat back, looking almost amused. Then I suppose we will see how sure you are when the town comes asking. Good night, rancher. He turned his horse, slow and deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. As he rode away, he lifted one hand, not quite a wave, more like a warning. When he disappeared down the road, the rancher did not move for a moment. He just stared after him, breathing slow, as if keeping anger on a short chain. Inside the house, the woman's knees finally gave a little. She gripped the doorframe. He knows I am here, she whispered when the rancher stepped onto the porch. The rancher nodded. He will not be the last to know. Fear crawled up her spine. I should leave. The rancher's eyes snapped to hers, sharp now. No, you cannot stop them if they come, she said, voice shaking despite her effort. He took a step closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could see the wear in his face, the lines carved by years of loss. I'm not afraid of them, he said. I'm afraid for you, she replied. For a moment something softened in him. Something like regret or longing or a memory he did not want to hold. Then his walls went back up, quick as a door shutting. You will stay inside tonight, he said. If anyone knocks, you do not answer. If anyone calls your name, you do not answer. If you hear shouting, you stay low and away from windows. She stared at him. What will you do? His voice dropped. What I must. She wanted to say she did not want him to fight for her. She wanted to say she did not want to be the reason blood was spilled on his porch. But another part of her, small and aching, wanted to believe she was worth being defended even once. Later, as darkness settled, she sat at the table and watched him clean his knife, slow and careful. Not a threat, not a show. A preparation. The lamp flickered, shadows moved on the walls. Outside, the wind carried distant sounds from the road. She looked at him across the table and saw a man standing at the edge of a choice. He could give her up to keep peace. He could keep her and risk war with his own town. And she, in turn, felt the fragile shape of love becoming possible, not because it was safe, but because it was not. Because in the middle of fear and mistrust and frontier life, he had chosen her shelter over his own comfort. She did not know how long that choice would hold. But as the night deepened and the first far-off voices carried on the wind again, she understood that whatever came next would not be decided by kindness alone. The voices returned after midnight, closer this time, not bothering to hide. She heard them from her bed, a low rumble of men talking like they owned the road, like the night belonged to them. A laugh rose and fell, rough and careless, and then the scrape of boots on porch boards cut through the dark. She sat up, heart hammering so hard she felt it in her throat. The rancher's words echoed in her mind. Stay away from windows. Do not answer. Stay low. She slid off the bed and moved to the corner farthest from the door, sinking to her knees with the quilt wrapped around her shoulders. Her breath came shallow and fast. She pressed her forehead to the wall and listened. A fist hit the door, not gentle, not polite. Open up, rancher. The rancher's voice answered from the front room, calm, almost bored. Go home. Another laugh. We just want to talk. Sheriff says you have to bring her in. Sheriff did not send you at this hour, the rancher said, a pause. Then another voice, softer, more dangerous because it sounded reasonable. We are trying to help you. Folks are saying things. You do not want trouble. Bring her out, let her speak for herself. The woman's stomach turned. Speak for herself. In front of men who already decided what she was. The rancher did not raise his voice, but she could hear the steel in it now. There's no talk to be had. The porch boards creaked again, not just one set of feet, more than two. She counted by sound, trying to keep from shaking. 3, 4, maybe 5. She pictured their faces without wanting to. Men like the one with the red scarf. Men with hungry eyes and careful smiles. Men who pretended they stood for order while they reached for whatever they could take. A hand tried the latch. The rancher spoke again, quieter. Do not silence. The latch stopped moving. Then a new sound, the scrape of wood on wood as something heavy was dragged closer. The hair on her arms rose. Are they bringing an axe, a bar, a log? The woman's mouth went dry. She looked toward the door as if her stare could hold it shut. Then the older native woman's voice cut through the night from somewhere outside, sharp as a whip. Leave this place. The men laughed. Old woman, go on back to the trees. Her voice did not tremble. You think the land does not watch? You think your mothers do not watch? Go. A pause followed, and in that pause the woman felt the weight of unseen things. The land outside, the dark hills. The old stories that lived in firelight. A Native American tale whispered into a child's ear, warning what happened to men who took what was not theirs. The man with the softer voice spoke again, but it had lost some of its ease. This is town business. The older woman answered, steady. This is not town. This is his home. And she is under his roof. Another man spat. Roof or not, she is not his wife? The word wife hit the woman's chest like a rock. Wife meant protection and belonging. Wife meant a name that men respected, at least enough to think twice. She had never been anyone's wife. She had never had that shield. The rancher's voice came, low and controlled. You do not speak of her. The red scarf man's voice rose from the dark. Close now, too close. Then bring her out, rancher, let us see her face. If she is decent, the sheriff will find her a place. If she is not, she will be sent on. That is fair, fair. The word was a lie dressed up as manners. The woman's hands clenched in the quilt. She could feel the choice forming like a knot in her chest. If she stayed hidden, they would press harder. If she left, she might save him, but she would be swallowed by the town and whatever it had waiting. In the front room, she heard the rancher move, slow steps across the floor. The lamp must have been lit. Shadows shifted under her door. Then his voice, louder now, meant to carry. I said go. The heavy thing scraped again. The door shuddered with a blow that made the whole house tremble. The woman gasped and pressed her palm to the wall as if she could steady the boards with her touch. Another blow. Wood groaned. The latch held, but she could hear the strain. She could not stay in the corner and hope anymore. Fear was not a plan. She rose, knees weak, and moved to the door. She did not open it. She pressed her ear to the wood and whispered, barely a sound, Please do not die because of me. She did not know if he heard. But she heard him answer anyway, voice rougher than before, as if the words cost him. I will not. A blow hit the door again. This time something cracked. Not fully, but enough that she knew the next one could be worse. The older native woman shouted again, Stop. The red scarf man laughed, cruel now. You cannot stop us. He cannot stop us. Then suddenly the sound of hooves thundered down the road. Fast, many hooves. A rider or two would not make that sound. It was a small group. For a heartbeat the porch fell silent, as if the men did not understand what they were hearing. The rancher's voice sharpened, Get off my porch. The hooves came closer, the pounding growing louder until it felt like the ground itself was speaking. The men on the porch shifted, boots scraping, their laughter gone. A voice shouted from the road, Hold up, hold, right there. The sheriff, or someone close enough to sound like him. The woman did not know, but she felt the shape of the moment changing. The porchmen cursed under their breath. One hissed, quick and angry, We will come back. Another voice, the red scarf man, low and venomous. This is not finished, Boots hurried. The porch creaked as they retreated. The heavy object scraped away. The door stopped shaking. Outside, the older native woman's voice stayed steady, speaking to someone newly arrived, but the words blurred in the wind. The woman's breath came in broken pulls. She leaned against the doorframe, dizzy with relief that tasted like fear. In the front room, the rancher's footsteps came down the hall. He stopped outside her door, and for the first time since she arrived, he opened it without hesitation. The lamplight fell across his face. She saw the strain there, the anger held tight, the exhaustion deeper than bone. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head, but tears filled her eyes anyway. They were going to break in. He nodded once, jaw clenched. "I know." A shout came from outside, a man's voice calling the rancher by name. The rancher turned toward it, then looked back at her. His gaze lingered, and for a moment she saw something that made her chest ache. Not just duty. Not just stubborn pride. Something softer, something that had no place in a hard world. Then he spoke, low and urgent. "You have to decide." She stared at him, confused. "What?" He stepped closer, and she could smell dust and sweat and cold night air on his clothes. "If the sheriff is here, he will ask questions. If he believes what that man is saying, he will order me to bring you in. If you go to town, they will tear you apart with their eyes, their words, their lies. And if you do not go, they will call me outlaw for keeping you." Her throat tightened. "What are you saying?" The rancher's eyes flashed with pain, as if he hated the words before he even spoke them. "I'm saying the safest thing for you might be to leave before morning." Her stomach dropped. "Leave." He nodded slowly. "I can saddle a horse. I can give you food, a blanket, and enough water to reach the river crossing. From there you can follow the creek south. There is a trading post 2 days from here. They will not know you." Tears slipped free, then she wiped them fast, ashamed. "And what about you?" His mouth tightened. "I will handle the town." She stepped closer without thinking, grabbing his sleeve, her fingers clutching the rough fabric like it was the only solid thing in the world. "You would send me back into the dark." His eyes closed for a brief moment. When he opened them, they were full of something he did not want to show. "I would keep you alive." The words struck her harder than any blow. "Keep you alive." Not keep you close, not keep you safe here? Because he could not promise that anymore. A voice called again from outside, sharper now. "Rancher, open this door." The rancher turned his head toward the sound, then back to her. His face was set, but his eyes begged without pleading. "You have to choose now," he said. "If you stay, they will come again, and next time there may be no one to stop them." Her chest heaved. She looked past him to the front room, to the heavy door that had nearly given way. She imagined the red scarf man's smile. She imagined the sheriff's cold questions. She imagined being dragged into town like a stray animal, judged, claimed, traded. She imagined leaving too, walking away from the first place that had felt like shelter, from the first man who had looked at her like she was a person and not a burden. Her fingers tightened on his sleeve. "I cannot go," she whispered. The rancher's throat worked. His voice dropped to a rough murmur. "Then I will do what I swore I would not do again." "What is that?" she asked, fear and hope tangled together. He looked at her, and the lamplight caught the old grief in his eyes. The ghost of the word had. "I will stand between you and the world," he said. "Even if it costs me everything." Outside, the pounding on the door began again, harder than before, and the voice shouted with authority. "Open up now, or we are coming in." The rancher's hand moved to the bar across the door. He did not lift it. He just held it steady, like a man holding the last line. The woman stood behind him, shaking, tears on her cheeks, knowing that whatever happened next would change them both forever. And then the first crack of splitting wood sounded through the house. The crack sounded again, louder, and the bar across the door groaned as the boards around it gave a little. The woman flinched and pressed her hands to her mouth. The rancher did not move back. He set his feet like roots and held the bar with both hands, shoulders squared, breathing slow, as if he could lend his calm to the wood itself. Outside, a voice barked, sharp with authority, "Open this door." The rancher's answer came low and steady. "You are not coming in like thieves." There was a pause, and then the pounding stopped. For a heartbeat, only the wind spoke, pushing dust against the porch steps. The silence felt like a held breath. Then boots scraped again, and a new voice rose, older, tired, and real. This is Sheriff Colton. Rancher, I do not want blood in the street. Unbar the door. The rancher's jaw tightened. He did not lift the bar. He spoke through the wood like a man speaking to a storm. Sheriff, if you are alone, step back and tell your men to do the same. The sheriff hesitated. The woman could hear it in the silence. I'm not here to harm anyone, the sheriff said at last. But you have got half the town stirred up. Folks say you are hiding a woman. Folks say she has no right to be here. The rancher glanced over his shoulder once. The lamplight caught the woman's face, pale and wet with tears. His eyes did not soften, but they steadied, like he was anchoring himself to a single truth. Then bring the law the right way, he said. Not by splintering my door in the dark. A murmur rose outside, angry and impatient. The red scarf man's voice cut through it like a knife. Sheriff, you see, he is defying you. He thinks he is better than town order. Let us in and we will handle it. The sheriff's voice snapped back. You will do no such thing. The words landed with weight. The red scarf man fell quiet, but not humbled. The woman could feel his resentment like heat. The older native woman spoke from the edge of the porch, calm as stone. Sheriff, you let wolves gather at a man's door. That is not law. That is hunger. A few men muttered. Someone spat. But the sheriff's tone changed, like a man suddenly remembering his badge was meant to guard, not to please. Enough, he said. All of you, step back. Boots shuffled. The porch boards creaked with reluctant movement. The rancher waited until the sound spread out, until the pressure against the door was gone. Then he lifted the bar and pulled the door open just enough to stand in the frame. The night air rushed in, cold and sharp. Lantern light from the yard threw long shadows across faces. The sheriff stood a few steps away, hands open, a worn hat on his head, and a look that said he was tired of being pulled by louder men. Around him were 3 deputies on horseback. Beyond them, a small crowd of townsmen gathered, some curious, some angry. The red scarf man stood near the front, smiling like a man who thought the ending belonged to him. The rancher kept his body in the doorway, blocking the view inside. Sheriff, he said. You want questions? Ask them here. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. Where is she? Behind me, the rancher said, and nothing more. The sheriff looked past him, trying to see around his shoulder. The rancher shifted slightly, not aggressive, just firm, a wall built of bone and will. The sheriff let out a slow breath. Rancher, you know what folks are saying. They say she ran from something. They say you are keeping her. They say you are hiding trouble. I have to know the truth. The rancher's voice stayed even. The truth is she came for work. She has done the work. She has eaten at my table. She has slept under my roof. And she has been threatened for it. A ripple moved through the crowd. The red scarf man scoffed. Threatened, he said loud, by who? By men trying to keep order. The older native woman's gaze snapped to him. By men who came in the night like coyotes, she said. By men who put their hands on a door that was not theirs. The sheriff's jaw flexed. He looked from the rancher to the red scarf man. Is that true? He asked. The red scarf man spread his hands in a false show of innocence. We came to talk. Rancher here got jumpy. We had to make him listen. The man's smile twitched. It was just for knocking, he said. The sheriff's voice dropped, dangerous now. You do not knock with a log. A few men shifted away from the red scarf man, suddenly not eager to be seen beside him. The sheriff stepped closer to the doorway, voice softer. Rancher, I still need to hear from her. If she has papers, if she has a name, if she is wanted. I cannot ignore the town forever. The woman inside felt her legs shake. Papers, wanted, those words were chains in this land. She stepped forward before fear could stop her. The rancher's arm moved as if to block her, but she touched his sleeve, gentle, asking without words. He looked at her and the lamplight caught the raw worry in his eyes. Then he shifted aside just enough for her to be seen, while still standing close, still between her and the crowd. Lantern light fell on her face. She held her chin up even though her throat was tight. Sheriff, she said, voice steady with effort. I do not have papers. I have never had them. I am not a thief. I am not here to cause trouble. I came because I was hungry and alone and I was told there was work. The sheriff studied her. Not like the other men did. Not like something to be measured or taken. His eyes held the hard truth of frontier life, but also the tiredness of a man who had seen too much cruelty pass itself off as righteousness. "What is your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Names could be used like rope? Then she spoke it, quiet but clear, Leora. A murmur moved through the crowd. The red scarf man laughed once. That could be any name. The older native woman's voice cut in. It is her name, and that is enough. The sheriff raised a hand for silence. Then he looked at Leora again. Where did you come from? She swallowed, feeling the past push at her ribs. From east of the dry flats, she said. I lived with a man who said he was kin. He promised to keep me safe. When the winter came, he tried to trade me like livestock. I ran. The crowd shifted. Some faces looked away, some looked harder. The red scarf man's eyes gleamed as if the story pleased him. The rancher's hand curled into a fist at his side, but he did not move. The sheriff's voice stayed calm. Did you harm him? No, she said, I left. That is all. The sheriff nodded slowly, weighing her words. Then he turned to the crowd. Listen, he said. A woman without papers is not a crime in itself. Half the folks who came west never had papers worth the ink. The law I uphold is meant to keep people from being hurt, not to hand them to the first loud man who wants to own them. The red scarf man stepped forward, anger flashing through his mask. Sheriff, you're letting him make a fool of you. He is hiding her, he will keep her, and next it will be something worse. He has always thought he can do as he pleases. The rancher's eyes sharpened. What is it you want? He asked quietly. Say it plain. The red scarf man's smile returned, ugly now. I want what the town wants, order, and I want you to stop acting like you are above us. The rancher nodded once, as if the answer confirmed something he already knew. No, he said. You want her because she is alone. You want to prove you can take what you point at. That is not order. That is a sickness. The red scarf man's face darkened. He made a move, half a step, like he might rush the doorway. A deputy's rifle came up. Not pointed at his heart, but enough to stop him. The sheriff's voice snapped. That is enough. You step back now. The red scarf man hesitated, eyes darting, seeing for the first time that the crowd was not fully with him. Some men had shifted behind the sheriff. Some had lowered their eyes. The sheriff turned toward his deputies. Take him in, he said. And any man who came here tonight with the thought of breaking down a door. Shock rippled through the yard. The red scarf man's mouth opened. You cannot. I can. The sheriff cut in, and I will. Because I am done letting fear pretend to be law. 2 deputies moved. The red scarf man tried to pull away, but hands closed on his arms. His hat fell into the dust. His scarf caught the lantern light like a streak of blood, then was swallowed by shadow as they hauled him back. The yard fell quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like a turning point. The sheriff looked to the rancher again, softer now. Rancher, he said, you have always kept to yourself, but you have kept the peace on your land. You have paid your taxes, helped when cattle went missing, and you have never once asked the town for anything. The rancher's eyes stayed on the sheriff, wary. So what now? He asked. The sheriff's gaze moved to Leora, then back. Now, the sheriff said, I tell the town the truth. That she is here to work, that she is under your protection, and that any man who comes sniffing around your porch at night will answer to me. Leora's knees nearly gave. Relief washed through her so hard it hurt. She pressed a hand to her chest as if to keep her heart from spilling out. The sheriff tipped his hat toward her. You will still need a record, he said. Not to trap you, but to shield you. Come into town with daylight. I will write your name in my book. I will note where you live and who you work for. It will not be much, but it will be something men cannot easily twist. She nodded, tears threatening again. Thank you, she whispered. The sheriff glanced at the older native woman and gave a small nod of respect, then turned to his deputies. Clear the yard, he said. Get these men home. This night is done. One by one, the crowd broke apart, shame and discomfort pulling them away. Lanterns bobbed down the road like fireflies. The porch steps creaked under retreating boots. The yard that had been full of threat became empty again, only wind and dust and the faint smell of horses remaining. When the last rider disappeared, the rancher let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. He closed the door and set the bar back into place. not from panic now, but from habit. Leora stood in the front room, shaking with the after of it. The lamp cast warm light on the plain walls. The house felt smaller than it had yesterday, but safer too, like it had survived a storm and found its own strength. The rancher turned to her. For a moment he did not speak. His eyes moved over her face as if making sure she was real, as if he had feared she would vanish the moment danger passed. "You did not have to step forward," he said finally, voice rough. "Yes," she said, "I did." He frowned. "Why?" She swallowed, feeling the truth rise up like a sunrise she could not stop. "Because I am tired of hiding," she said. "And because I could not bear the thought of you paying for my life with yours." The rancher's gaze flickered, pain and something softer crossing it. "I have lost enough already," he murmured, more to himself than to her. She took a careful step closer. "Your sister," she said gently. "The bed? The little wooden horse?" His jaw tightened, and for a second she thought she had gone too far. But then his shoulders sagged, just slightly, the way a man sags when he finally admits the weight is real. "My sister died in a winter storm," he said. "She rode out for help when the river rose. The horse came back without her. I found her 2 days later, frozen near the cottonwoods." Leora's breath hitched. "I am sorry," she whispered. He nodded once, eyes fixed on the floor. "And the horse," she said softly. His voice was barely audible. "It was my boy's." The words settled into the room like snow. He did not say more, but he did not need to. Leora saw it then, the shape of his silence, the reason he had lived like a ghost on his own land. He had loved, and the West had taken, and he had survived by burying the parts of himself that still wanted anything. Leora reached out, slow, giving him every chance to pull away. She touched his hand. He did not move at first. Then his fingers closed around hers, careful, like he was afraid of breaking the moment. "I do not know what I am doing," he said. "Neither do I," she answered, voice trembling with a small, fragile courage. "But I know what it feels like to be left with nothing." He looked up then. In the lamplight his eyes were tired, but they were not empty. "I promised myself I would never bring someone into my sorrow," he said. She nodded, understanding. "And I promised myself I would never trust a man again," she said. Silence held them. Not the cold silence of distance, but a warmer one, the kind that lets truth rest without rushing it. Outside, the wind eased. The house stopped creaking like it was bracing for blows. Somewhere far off, a night bird called, not alarmed, just living. The next morning, daylight came clear and honest. The road looked less like a threat and more like a path. The rancher saddled a horse for Leora, not to send her away, but to ride beside her into town. The older native woman walked with them to the edge of the yard, her gaze calm. "This land tests hearts," she said to Leora. "Do not let it harden yours completely." Leora nodded. "I will try." The older woman looked at the rancher. "And you?" she said. "Do not hide behind grief until it becomes your whole name." He held her gaze, then dipped his head once, a promise without words. They rode into town in full sun, not under cover of night. The sheriff met them by the office door. He wrote Leora's name in his book with a careful hand, then stamped the page as if the ink could become a shield. It was not a grand thing, but it mattered. In the Old West, small protections could mean survival. As they left the office, people watched from porches and storefronts. Some faces held judgment, some held curiosity, but fewer held hunger now. The sheriff's deputy stood near, and the red scarf man was nowhere to be seen. Leora breathed in slow. The town smelled of dust and coffee and horses, and it no longer felt like it could swallow her whole. Back at the ranch, days passed with a new kind of rhythm. Work still came early, the land still asked its price. But the fear no longer owned every corner of the house. The rancher spoke a little more. Leora laughed once, surprised by the sound, then covered her mouth as if she had done something wrong. He watched her with a look that was almost wonder, like he had forgotten laughter could live in a place like this. One evening, as the sky turned gold and the hills softened into shadow, they sat on the porch together. The rocking chairs creaked gently, not with warning now, but with peace. Leora looked out over the fields. "I asked where I would sleep," she said quietly. He nodded, and I answered. He replied. She turned to him. "You gave me more than a bed." His eyes held hers, steady and true. "So did you," he said. They did not speak of marriage that night. They did not speak of forever. The West had taught them not to throw big promises into the wind. But when he reached for her hand, there was no hesitation this time. His fingers closed around hers like he meant to hold on. The lamp inside the house flickered in the window, warm against the growing dark. The little wooden horse on the shelf caught the last light of day, and for the first time it did not feel like a ghost. It felt like a memory honored, not a wound reopened. The land outside was still wild. The world was still hard. But on that porch, in the quiet space they had fought for, hope sat beside them like something real. And when the night came, it came without fists on the door.